Now then, guys, welcome back to the Cycle Sunday podcast. Mr. Bowker, the plan was for this one for you and I to be sat next to each other recording this in person, but we're not, are we? What happened?
Are we telling the truth?
We always tell the truth on Cycle Sunday.
Okay, right, let's tell the truth.
Bend
So,
it a little bit.
no, I think we should be absolutely open and honest because we did say at last week's recording that was going to happen. So,
Just in case, let me just preface this, but if anyone wasn't listening last week, the reason we're joking about this is last weekend, Paul drove all the way from Edinburgh down to my house to deliver a new bike for Mrs. Petrolped. More on that later. So we were
yeah,
physically together
yes,
just a few days ago, but it all
yeah.
went wrong.
Well, it didn't go wrong. I think that is important. It didn't go wrong. So, the Sunday morning, I'd been up at 2:30 a.m. to set off at 3 a.m. And what was interesting was by 8:40 a.m., I had covered all three countries in mainland Britain. So I'd
What
come
was
out.
wrong with Northern Ireland? Why didn't you pop across the Irish Sea and do Northern Ireland as well? I mean, come on, they're going to be missing
Yeah,
out.
indeed. So I'd come from Scotland through England, and I'd gone over the Bristol Channel into Wales by 20 to 9. So I had 20 to 9
Oh,
on
mate.
Sunday morning. Dropped a new bike off to a customer. This is our new nationwide delivery service. Dropped a new bike off in Cardiff, then dropped one off in Bristol. Then went to Chichester to see my good friend at the other side of the lens here, and then headed back. So what the
Back
intention?
via Farnham for
Back
another
by
drop off on
Farnham
Monday.
for another drop.
Yeah.
Yes. So all in all, got down to Mr. Petrolped's. We got the bikes out. We did more filming for season 2, and then I don't know what happened. Something happened with some bottles,
Yes. I
and
think what it was it was a really hot day, and
yes,
while we were finishing off filming, we started drinking Corona, and then Mrs. Petroped started to prepare dinner, and then we had a bottle or two of wine, and we totally forgot that we had to do the podcast recording, and I only remembered about 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon of Monday, by which time you were already halfway back to Edinburgh.
yeah. So isn't it Mrs. Petrolpad's fault
Yes, let's
Be-
definitely blame her.
because she brought the first Corona?
She did, yes. So, now the most exciting thing. There's a few exciting things here. So, first things first, we've talked about Mrs. Petroped's bike, her new e-bike,
Yes.
which you delivered,
Yep.
and she was absolutely delighted. And one of the things I want to say is a massive thank you to you, and also, and it'll be a double thank you to Trek UK
Yes.
as well, because not only did she get a lovely new e-bike, but you made it look very lovely with some nice grips and pedals. But we also got a lovely set of Bontrager mountain bike shoes
Yes.
for her to wear.
Yes.
The whole bike looked great, and she loves it. Now, we only did a very brief test ride. We've actually got this coming weekend, so by the time this goes out on Sunday, we'll have done it. Tracy and I are going to go out for a ride together
Yeah.
on Sunday.
Brilliant.
So she's super excited about
Yes.
that.
Yes.
Yes. But the very cool thing that I didn't expect is that you were actually delivering 2 bikes on Sunday. Because as we've talked about in a podcast only a couple of weeks ago, my Bianchi Ultra XR4 frame-up custom build is at the moment stalled.
Yes.
Quite significantly due to a lack of group set. I even found myself, by the way, this week watching a YouTube video all about the Campagnolo Super Record EPS group set, and I had a heart longing of all this close-up B-roll of all this carbon fiber and titanium loveliness.
Yes.
So we can't make the Ultra XR4 at the moment. We still
Yeah.
don't have a definite date as to when we can, but it's going to be later on in the year.
Sure.
So, one of the amazing things that Paul and his lovely brother Richard thought we could do to give us an opportunity to create some content for season 2 of
Yeah.
Cycle Sunday, but actually also it's for you guys to get some more, if you like, review content of a bike that you are very keen on
Yeah.
and are very impressed with, and that is a Bianchi.
Yeah.
But it is a Bianchi Arcadex gravel bike.
Yes.
Now, we did a video on gravel bikes for Cycle Sunday Season 1, and the Arcadex, we used the Trek Checkpoint and the Bianchi Arcadex to look at what gravel bikes were and why you'd want them. And I did fall in love with the Arcadex. I just think it's a beautiful, beautiful looking bike.
Yeah.
The color scheme, I just think it looks amazing. The design of it's beautiful. And you bought me an Arcadex down to play with until the Ultra XR4 is made, and I cannot tell you how amazingly excited I am about that.
Yeah.
But it didn't stop there, because the lovely guys at Trek UK,
Yep.
I'm sure you will give a name drop in a moment to the actual to the guy, I can't remember his name, apologies.
It's Tony.
Also sent me
Yeah.
some bits, some finishing kit to basically trial and see what I think of them. So we've got some amazing Bontrager stuff put on the Arcadex, the coolest set of pedals in the world ever.
Yes.
Beautiful. They've got like a heat treatment finish. It reminds me of an Inconel or titanium exhaust on a supercar when you get the coloration when it gets really, really hot and it's gone through some heat cycles. That's what my pedals look like on the Arcadex. A really cool pair of Bontrager mountain bike shoes and an amazing helmet. And also a set of bottle cages and some bottles. But yeah, so I'm super excited about getting to experience the Arcadex.
Yes.
Because it's a really cool bike, isn't it?
It is. And I think from a content point of view, because one thing Peter is clearly very good at is not only reviewing, but also you've got the mountain bike coming. So you've got the rail e-bike coming. You've got your Bianchi Ultra XR4 coming. So you've got your road bike, and then having the Arcadex there is really, really great, because it will allow you to explore the differences properly. Own and experience. Right? Okay, this is what a road bike does, and this is what a road bike does brilliantly, and this is what a mountain bike does, and this is what a mountain bike does brilliantly. But then also to own and experience a gravel bike for a good number of months, and to get some proper mileage on it, and to really understand where that type of bike excels as well. I think it's just really good, because a 40-minute test ride on something is not the same as owning it, which is why Rosie and I have purchased 2 e-mountain bikes, the rails, because I've ridden a lot of e-mountain bikes. I've sold a lot of e-mountain bikes, but as we've discussed on the podcast before, physically owning something on a day-to-day basis and riding it as it's your own bike, it's always better to be able to give that experience to a customer. So it's great.
Yeah. Yeah, and I've only ridden it. We did a little bit of filming at the handover. We literally rode up the track at the back of the house across the farm, and it instantly felt very special. So I can't wait to put some miles on it.
Yes.
I think it'll take some getting used to, for sure. But yeah, it's a very lovely bike. So once this podcast dropped, I'll put some pictures on social about it, because it is very, very lovely. It's a lovely thing to look at.
Yes.
So I'm really, really excited about that. I've actually booked a first, like, a few days away. It's a good friend of mine, Dino's 50th birthday recently, and as his birthday present, I'm taking him away for a kind of couple of nights boys' weekend away, and we are going cycling. He's a big cyclist, so I kind of sent him a message saying, because his son Sam, I'll give Sam a shout out. He's a really good CX rider,
Wow.
national level cyclocross rider.
Oh, wow.
So I said, Dino, have you got a cyclocross bike or a gravel bike? And he's like, yeah, I can borrow one of Sam's. We went, right, good. We're using the gravel bikes and the cyclocross bikes. So that'll be quite an interesting video, actually.
Yes.
Because Dino will be on a cyclocross bike and I'll be on a gravel bike. And I know when we did the gravel bike video, we had some kind of, what are the differences? So we can kind of, I'll point those out.
Yeah.
On the video too. But yeah, really excited about that. So that's some exciting content while we wait for, I guess, the next bike delivery. I sound like Shmee. I feel like I'm Tim with all of these cars being delivered. It's different as bikes. My biggest problem is where I put them all.
Yes.
And then the next one will be the Trek rail. I don't know whether I'd announced to everybody that I'd bought a Trek.
Oh no, we haven't.
E-bike.
We said you were getting we said we got an e-bike. Oh, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
Oh, it does. Well, these guys that tune into the Cycle Sunday podcast, I have bought, or certainly, sorry, I have on order anyway. I'm doing the same thing as Paul. So I've bought the same bike as Paul and Rosie, a Trek Rail 9.5.
Flip. Well done.
Hey. Which is it's the carbon frame rail.
Yep.
But it's the entry-level component set.
Got it.
And I've done it because it's the same. I'm going to basically approach it in the same way as Paul, but we thought it would be really interesting for season 2. So we're going to adapt, evolve, modify, however you want to describe the bikes.
Yeah.
But Paul's going to do it in one direction, and I thought it would be really interesting if I did it in a slightly different one.
Yeah.
So Paul's going to go down the route of, because he's a bit more rad and, double gaps, berms and things. That's totally wrong, isn't it?
Keep going.
Shred gnar.
We're so old, aren't we?
I know. So Paul is a far, far better technician on a bike in terms of the way he can ride. So he's going to basically go down the kind of bike park, slightly more aggressive way of riding, air, jumps, berms, those types of things. And that will put a certain requirement on the bike and the componentry on the bike.
Yeah.
Whereas for me, we do have some bike parks around here, but none of the scale of the kind of things that you have up in Scotland.
Yeah.
But what we do have is lots of trails and chalk paths and downland riding.
Yeah.
So we thought it'd be quite interesting for me to look at how I would adapt and evolve the Trek rail to be more suitable for that kind of riding.
Yes.
And it will be different.
Yeah. Yeah. It will. It will.
So
be different.
we're not going to do anything too drastically, but it might be things like changing the tires, it might be changing the wheels, it might be changing the gearing, the suspension setup, those types of things. And we can compare and contrast what we're doing, because our assumption is lots of you listeners and the guys watching Cycle Sunday, you live in different parts of the country and you'll have different types of requirements for your bikes. So I'm super excited about that. We're not quite sure when my rail will arrive, but I'm guessing that you were saying maybe sort of July time,
Indeed.
sometime like that.
Yeah, and that delivery date is still tracking.
Yes, yeah. So what we'll probably do with that one, because I just want an excuse to come up to Edinburgh, is come up to Edinburgh to collect the bike, but maybe book a little bit more time so that I can come up, I can bring the Arcadex. We could do some riding with the Arcadex, me on the Arcadex, you on the checkpoint. We could do some riding with the rails with Rosie, and I think that would be really interesting.
Yes, very much.
So loads of Cycle Sunday is well underway, season 2 anyway, well underway in terms of planning and content creation, and we will keep you up to date as to when we expect to, because we've actually got the first film you filmed last week, the delivery of the bike and handover. We've got some great footage, so we've got some editing to do already.
Yes.
So that's the kind of the exciting stuff. New bike stuff's always exciting, right? Um, but one of the things I wanted to talk to Paul about and have a conversation that hopefully people can kind of cherry pick and take things away
Mm.
from. So this week, when we said goodbye to each other and waved you off to Scotland, a bit later on that day, I got in my car with my bike. I was actually in a press car in a Polestar 2, full electric car, and I drove up to Wales for a couple of days of work in Wales. One of the guys I was working with in Wales is a big cyclist and cycles every day. He's targets to do 100 miles a week.
Brilliant.
That's his and that's road miles, and he does that even in the winter. He'll go out at night time and stuff. So we were going to go out on the bike. So I took my Venge with me, and we managed to get out on Tuesday evening. We only did an hour loop after
Mm.
work because that's all the time we had. About 17 miles. By goodness me, is Wales
Yes.
hilly. So it was quite hilly. But the thing I want to talk to you about, and I think it's just a really interesting subject, is that a lot of my riding I do on my own. I quite like riding out on my own. But when I do ride out with people, and I'll often ride out with Dan, we'll go out together. One of the things that the cycling techniques I enjoy the most because of the exhilaration, apart from descending off of
Mm.
hills, is riding in the draft of someone
Mhm.
else, and riding, on the wheel of someone else to get that aerodynamic advantage. And one of the things and the reason I thought we could chat about this is when I went out with my mate on Tuesday. The last, I don't know, 3-4 miles of the ride were a gradual downhill gradient to our finish point on a really nice quality tarmac A road, and I was on the
Mm.
front, putting a turn in on the front, and Richard was behind me, and I kind of went along probably, I don't know, 3-4
Yeah.
minutes, really, really giving it the big guns, and then obviously bonked because I'm not particularly fit at the
Mhm.
moment. And I just pulled to the right because that's when Dan and I go out, I just pull to the right and Dan goes up the left hand side and I just drop back and hook on his wheel and he takes a turn on
Yeah.
front. And then when Dan's tired, he'll drop round and we'll just rotate round on and
Yeah.
through. And I'm sure the guys listening to this that ride regularly in groups will know this technique anyway, but some of you might
Mm.
not do. But there's a big advantage of doing that, right? The guy in the slipstream has a huge efficiency and aerodynamic advantage. And you might know the numbers. I read somewhere it's as much as maybe 20 to 30% less energy needed to go the same
Yeah.
speed because of the aerodynamic advantage. That's why you see the pro peloton riding like that. But the bit I wanted to talk about was the how cool and what great fun it is riding like that, but how dangerous it can be as
Mhm.
well if you don't know what you're doing, or if you're riding to different arrangements or
Yeah.
protocols.
Yeah. No, you're right, and it is great fun when you get into a rhythm with a group of people that you know and trust. It's it's probably similar to competitors on a racetrack in a race car, in the fact that
Yeah,
people are competing against each other, but they're working with each other in order to give yourself an advantage. And what is great
yeah,
is that even though Lewis Hamilton and Max Verstappen are on opposing teams and are proper competitors with each other, their ultimate craft, their race craft, and their immense respect, talent, and trust in each other is unbelievable. So these guys can be doing
yeah,
hundreds of miles an hour in wet weather conditions, physically not being able to see the car in front, but they absolutely know when that person is going to brake. They know when they're going to turn. They know that they know the road positioning of each other in a car, and it's exactly the same on a bike. And and yeah, when you've got a group of people riding together, because it's not just the person on the behind the rider on the front that is getting an advantage, but it's also the rider on the front with the other riders in their slipstream who is also getting an advantage, believe it or not. So the person
Yeah.
person who is on the front cutting the air is still getting an advantage because of the people slicing the air behind them. So I don't know the numbers massively, but
Yeah.
yeah, it's a well-known thing. And
And the more of you in that
yes,
train, the more efficient as you go back through
yes,
the train. You get more
oh,
efficiencies that
massive,
way. I remember listening to an interview. That it was the year that Bradley Wiggins won the
yeah,
Tour de France, and it was after the first week. And he kind of kept himself to himself. He just sat in the middle of the peloton. He'd had all his team members in
yeah,
front of him. I remember him being, interviewed, saying, how is it? It must be really tough. It's fast. And he said, no. And he said, the problem is if you just sit in the middle of the
yeah,
peloton, you get such an aerodynamic advantage. You almost get
yeah,
sucked along. He said, my danger is I'm basically going to
mm,
detrain over the
yes,
week because I'm not pushing my body
yes,
hard enough. So that, when you're sat in the middle of a peloton of, I don't know, 50, 60 riders like they've
mm,
got on the tour, you basically get
yeah,
sucked along. Um, but the thing I wanted to talk about was if some of the guys listening to this may
mm,
never have done it, so I guess I thought it'd be useful to talk about what are the basic things you should
hmm,
do in terms of I guess the first thing to talk about is the closer you are to the person
hmm,
in front, the more of an
yeah,
advantage you get. So if you trust each other enough, when Dan and I go out on our bikes, we've done it so long now
mm,
together, my wheel will literally be a matter of inches
yeah,
directly behind
yeah,
Dan's rear wheel. That's as close as I can physically
yeah,
get.
50 to 80 millimeters. Rosie will
Yeah,
sit on my back wheel in my draft,
yeah,
and this is where we would always talk about corporate responsibility, and we're gonna get onto this in a minute because it's one of my biggest bugbears. But it is that corporate responsibility that Rosie has to be concentrating just in case I make a movement, but I also have to be totally aware that I've got another rider in my slipstream 50 to 80 millimeters from my back tire. So the information
yeah,
that I am passing to that rider behind and the information that I'm feeding back through my pedals, it trains you to be so smooth. There's no on the gas,
yeah.
off the gas, on the gas, on the gas.
I,
If you are not incredibly smooth, then it can be toast for both of you.
yeah. And I guess so a nice
Yeah,
smooth pace. And I guess if you're doing it for the first time, don't go out flat out. Go out at a pace that you're both quite comfortable with and build up
yeah,
slowly. But we'll find ourselves. I know Dan and I, we can quite happily sit on the road that we're on is a nice big
yes,
long straight road. You can sit at 25 or more miles an
yeah,
hour together quite happily for quite long
yes,
periods of time. But the person in front's big role, as well as being smooth, is to be
yeah,
looking ahead at potential
yeah,
issues ahead. And I guess the two biggest potential issues ahead, especially in the UK, is poor road surface. So if there's a
hmm,
pothole or an imperfection in the road or a sleeping
yeah,
policeman or something, if you're riding on your own, you could just jiggle round it and that
yeah,
wouldn't be a problem. But if you've got a train of riders behind you, you can't just wiggle round it because the person behind you won't
hmm,
see it and won't be able to react fast enough, and they'll go straight over it and
yeah,
risk, you know, a puncture, worst case, falling off. So if you can see something, you need to indicate that there is something
yeah,
on the road
yeah,
ahead. And this is where I found it quite interesting. I'd not even thought about it when you said before we started recording the
mm,
podcast, is that different groups of riders will have hand signals that they've evolved or agreed
yeah,
upon that describe that. So, for me, when I'm out riding, if there's something that's not, I mean, it's going to be difficult on the
yeah,
podcast to do this, but I would point out with my left or my right
hmm,
hand uh, which side of the bike there's going to be
yeah,
something on, And just a point is there's something, not very nice. If I jiggle my hand at the same
Yes.
time, it means it's a really nasty thing. That's my, or what I've used, but different people have different
Yeah.
hand
The,
signals,
the
right?
the pointing is usually, so you're pointing to the left or the right hand side of the bike, which is signifying that there is a single item that is going to be coming past on that side of the bike. So whether it be a pothole, a
Yeah,
grid, a little bit of ironwork, something like that, a badger. Or if you wave your hand to that side, it's basically saying that there is there is some kind of imperfection across the road. So if there's
yeah,
gravel on the road, or you're about to go over a cattle grid, or something that it's not coming either side of the bike, it's just happening in front of the bike, and caution,
yeah,
then that's where you would tend to wave your hand. But again,
yeah.
it
And then the other one,
it's interpretation. So but we just proved our own point. There's two very, very similar um, things, or similar styles, but with two slightly
yeah,
subtle differences. So it's really important, if you're
yeah,
riding with a good cyclist but a stranger to you cycling, it's worth just having 2-3 minutes at the beginning, just agreeing what your hand signals mean.
yeah. And then the other one is a parked car.
Yes, yes,
So you're in the tuck behind someone
yeah,
in their draft,
yeah,
and they pull out to the right to go past a parked
yeah,
car, and you're looking down at their back
yeah,
wheel, and you go straight into the back of
yeah,
the parked
yeah,
car.
yeah,
So
yeah,
again, often you'll have an arm behind the back,
yes.
kind of. Again, I can't show it on the
Correct.
podcast,
Pointing
but
in the
wave your arm behind the back.
pointing in the direction that you need the riders behind you to follow you. So you,
Yeah,
and then
exactly.
also what's really important, once you pass the cars, you then point behind you again to say it's now safe to move back in.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
so it's
So
really important.
again, the more group riding, and I remember when I went, it was many years ago. I'd not been riding long. I went out with a local cycle group near where I lived, the Fareham Wheelers.
Right.
Um, and I remember there was a few new people rocked up actually that day, and someone said, "Right, who's not ridden in a group
Mm-hmm.
before? And this is how we do it." And that was, I thought, that was really, really
Yes.
good. And then they broke us into different levels of ability, so that you weren't stuck in a group with, animals that were going to go along at 500 miles an hour and destroy you within 10
Yes.
minutes. Um, so I think that, I mean, that's I quite like practicing that, because if you practice it when you're just out on a fun
Mm.
ride, if you were to do a bigger ride like a Sportif, 50 miles, 80 miles, 100
Mm.
miles, the difference it can make to your day if you can get on the back of a group, or you can ride with a group of similar ability, is
Mm-hmm.
immense. Absolutely immense. Dino, the guy I'm going to the Cotswolds with, him and I did a few years ago. One of my medals up there, I can't see. Oh, it was sponsored by Trek as well. Actually, we did the Tour of
Right.
Wessex, and the Tour of Wessex is a 3-day staged sportif, 100-mile ish each day,
Wow.
coming back to the same campsite. And it takes on some big loops. There's a big loop in Dorset that does Durdle Door and around there. There's a big loop into the top of North Devon, does a lot of the kind of Dartmoor.
Wow.
It's a proper 3 days on a
Yeah.
bike. And we did the first day, and we got not separated, but we ended up, just me and Dino, for quite a chunk of the first day, and it was 110 miles, I think. And we were absolutely bushed by the end of the first day, and we're like, what have we let ourselves in
Mm-hmm.
for? And the next day was a big day of climbing, but we ended up joining up with a group of riders that were just a little bit stronger than us, but it was
Yes.
fantastic because we managed to cycle with them, and we destroyed the second day.
Brilliant.
We had a brilliant day on the bike because we were with a big group of people. Whenever there was a flat, we did on and through, and we absolutely flew. I mean, at one point we were doing 28 miles an hour on the flat
Mm-hmm.
in a group, and it was without really feeling like we were making an effort. It was an amazing day.
Yes.
So it's a really good thing if you can learn to do your on and through thing. My tip, and I don't know whether this is yours, maybe it is, don't feel like you have to sit on the front when it's your turn forever. It's actually quicker and more efficient for you to maybe just do shorter turns on the front, drop back and recuperate, than sit on the front until you completely bonk. So if you just do half a minute on the front and drop back, rather than thinking you got to stay on there for 5 minutes. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, and it's also important to say, there's a difference between blowing up and bonking. So bonking is pretty much
Sorry,
you
that
know,
was my bad
no,
vernacular.
it's fine. But it's just so we're accurate. Bonking is basically a point where you've completely run out of your glycogen stores, and that's it. It's game over. Whereas blowing up is just literally you've just been pushing so hard that you just need a recovery moment.
Yeah,
But no, your point is absolutely right. Just never. And the other thing, don't when you are on the front, ride at your pace, even if it slows the train down compared to the guy before by a couple of kilometers an hour. Don't worry
yeah,
about that. If the train then wants to come through, it'll come through. But don't
yeah,
feel as though if you're averaging, I don't know, 18 mile an hour at that moment in time, don't feel as though you have to ride at 18 miles an hour or whatever the speed that you have to do to average 18. If
yeah,
your legs are going to explode, take your turn on the front, but still ride at your pace. And then when you peel off, the train will go through, you'll sit on the back, and the train will find its natural pace again. So, but
yeah,
what's
yeah,
also important is if you are in the train, don't then harry along the person who has now taken the turn on the front. You settle back a little bit as well, right?
mm,
It's one of those things. It's more efficient to have everybody taking a turn on the front at their pace and keeping your averages up than constantly trying to push along and keep an average high. So just
yeah,
and it's what I'll always keep coming back to. It is a corporate responsibility. And this is what everybody needs to understand. If you are in a
mm,
group of riders, whether you're on the front, the back, or any of the riders in the middle, you have got a corporate responsibility for the safety of everybody around you. The end.
yeah, yeah. So, so come on then. We promised to talk about this. This is now episode 15 of Cycle Sunday
Wow.
podcast, and we are now going to talk about your love of Zwift.
Oh my goodness. So this is it's going to light up the comments, isn't it?
Come
Oh,
on!
right. Okay. Here we go. So before the Zwift revolution, and well, no, let's not call it Zwift. Before the indoor training revolution, so people, yeah.
Yes.
So it doesn't matter whether you're Zwift, Sufferfest, Trainer Road, all that sort of stuff. Um, you know, that's your indoor training. What you basically had at a Sportive is waves of riders, and your waves of riders, and you still have this today. And your waves of riders is your fast boys and girls at the front, and then you've got waves all the way back to the folk who just want to challenge themselves to riding the distance on whatever they've brought, whether it's an old push iron, a chopper, or a
Yep.
hybrid bike. It's just, I want to do 60 miles and tick it off and never do it again. But what's happened since the turbo training revolution is that you've got riders who have come from nowhere. They've not been through the club outdoor riding experience. They've not ridden and trained in trains of groups and learnt that corporate responsibility, learnt to ride wheel on wheel. learnt to ride handlebar next to handlebar. But you've now got this, and usually in the old days, those riders were out the back. So your faster club riders
Yeah, because they
who
weren't
weren't
very
very
fit.
fit because you've not done that much work. Now, and then what happened was that you knew if you got into wave A or wave B, that you were just surrounded by club riders who understood the rules of riding together. And you could get in a train of
Yeah,
15 people, and I could do an Instagram post behind majority of people. You had that much trust. Now what's happening, I'm finding over the last couple of years, and it has put me off doing Sportives, I will not lie, is that you've now got these folk who have done epics amounts of work. I mean, hats off, right? This isn't a criticism of the amount of work and effort that you've put in to create really strong engines. But we've now got people who are riding in wave A and wave B who are rightly there because they are powerful enough on the correct type
mm,
of bike, but have zero or very little experience in riding in a group of people. They don't understand the
yeah,
etiquette. They don't understand the corporate responsibility. They don't understand that it's not just about their Strava. It is about everybody's safety, and that is number one. And I get really, really annoyed where you've got folk who are on the front, their pacing is up and down. It's not like being on cruise control. It's that person on the motorway that you pull out because they're going slowly. So you pull out into the next lane to be able to overtake them. You've not changed your speed because you're on cruise control. And the moment you get on their rear three quarter, they accelerate.
yeah,
And and then you then have to accelerate to get past them. And then the moment that you pass
yeah,
them, they're somewhere behind you in the rear view mirror because they're just not concentrating. So
yeah. And then a couple of minutes later, they
exactly.
overtake you.
Yeah, exactly. And that is exactly what is happening on Sportives. And it was the 2019, so that recent, the 2019 Loch Ness Etap, where I was it was a training ride for me doing the Marmot later that year. And Steve, the guy that I rode the Marmot with, I was riding with him, and we were going to go and set a time because this was a pacing and a nutrition and hydration strategy event for us. So we went out, we went and did the ride, and within 19 kilometers of setting off, we both went side by side, went out of each other's draft, went side by side, and basically was saying to everybody, do not join a train with us. We are riding on our own. And we just rode side by side. And we got out of a group just in time who absolutely totaled themselves. I think I can't remember the number of riders that went down, but it was anywhere between 6 and 9 riders that went down. And you know, it's it's scary. It's scary, people.
There's. I mean, I'm trying to think. It might have been. It was either the Dragon Ride or the Etap Cymru. I remember doing that and just seeing the remnants of a
Yeah,
big crash, and it was clear because going back to describe when we were talking about drafting, um, all that needs to happen if you're 50 millimeters off the back
yeah.
of someone's wheel. It would be like you say, you're going down the straight in a Formula One
Just
car and you
lift.
just lift
Yes.
at the wrong time.
Yeah.
Someone's going to come up your back. So if you touch wheels with someone and you're both bowling along the road at 25
Yeah.
miles an hour, you're gonna have a
Yeah.
big accident, and then anybody
Yes.
behind you, they're
Yeah.
coming off as well. And I can remember seeing a crash, and it was horrible. There was
Yeah.
claret everywhere, and
Yeah.
broken bikes, and and lots of
Yeah.
gravel rash, and and it does
Yeah.
put you off. If I see an accident because someone's, I don't know, hit a bit of diesel on the road or missed brake going into a corner or something like that,
Mm,
that's one thing. It's never nice, but you think, well, okay. But if you see an accident that's caused by people not
mm.
riding properly,
Yeah, but
it's
it's
not good.
worse than that.
It's not good.
And I fully agree with you. But the stupid things that's going on now. I mean, stupid things. So, for example, in that first session on Loch Ness Tap, the roads would. I mean, you're setting off at 6ish in the morning, so there's still a
Yeah,
dampness in the air, and you're
yeah,
constantly going. The A82, the first section, is actually closed, so it's a closed road event. Oh,
lovely.
incredible! I mean, you'll never get the opportunity to ride the A82 down that side um, of the lock at Loch Ness at any other time of the year. I mean, it is spectacular. And then you climb out of Fort Augustus up over the top of the hill, which is anybody who's worried about it, don't worry, guys. It's just 3 15-minute, 85 to 95% threshold sessions. That's a way to break it down. Anyway, advice over. And then you
And just
no,
vom at the
not at all,
top.
because you're only working 85 to 95. You're not getting into your anaerobic zone. Right. So, and then you've got this absolutely gorgeous ride that then goes back up the other side of the lock. But the A82 section, that is the proper train session because it's relatively flat, a little bit undulated, and it's fast. And it covers both sides of the road. And what happens, Peter, when you're on a damp track in your car and you cross a white line with your tyre? What happens?
in a You have a squeaky bum moment, but and you've got four
Yes.
tires in
Yes.
a car. You hit a white bit of paint on a
Yeah.
road bike
On a
in the
corner.
wet, and that you can lose a front wheel
Correct.
from underneath you
Right.
very, very
So if
easily.
you're in a train of riders on a sequence of sort of smooth flowing S bends, and you can see that
Yeah.
train of riders riding the apex, so they're riding the racing line underneath a canopy of trees at 6 o'clock in
Hmm.
the morning in April, following each
Yeah.
other's line across double white lines, what is the next thing that is going to happen?
You're going to be calling
Right.
999, aren't you?
Why, oh, why, people, does the red mist descend and all that common sense that we absolutely know go out of the window and you put yourself and everybody else in utter danger? Why? How does it happen? Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know. And I think it's easy sometimes maybe to just think that, you're invincible and if you're in a group of people, what's the worst
Yeah.
that can happen? But, it's, I falling off a road bike, well, sorry, falling off any
No.
bike is not a nice thing
But
to
on a
happen.
road bike, it is so
But I think it
fast.
just, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And then, for me, the thing that would really upset me more than anything is broken bones heal. But if you scratch my bike, I'll be really annoyed.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Especially if I had my Ultra XR4 and someone knocked me off it and I scratched my EPS record, my super record EPS group set, I'd be
Yes. Yes.
crying.
So anyway,
Yeah, I'm gonna I'm gonna get I'm gonna actually go to a paint protection company and get a PPF on that bike before it gets ridden. You think I'm joking? I
so
take it
Dove
to Dub
Customs, yeah.
Customs.
So have I ranted
Oh yeah,
long
no.
enough?
So
I'm
I think
sorry, but
no, I don't. It's not. It's not a rant because I honestly think that these are things that we've both experienced. I haven't. I'm never in wave A and B, so it's probably worse
mm,
right at the pointy end. Um, And I think there are some occasions I've seen it in rides that where people try and get to the front and they don't really have. They shouldn't. I'm going to use the word. They don't have the right to be
Mm-hmm.
in the first waves because
Mm-hmm.
they're not good enough. But they go up there anyway because they want to be at the front. And they soon get found out and they get
Yeah.
spat out the back of a
Yeah.
group very, very quickly. So I'm not at that level. I've never been a particularly quick rider over a sportif. I've never really gone into any sportif and said I'm going to ride this in X time. I'm going to finish is my
Yes.
goal, if you like. So that, but I can imagine it is tricky because when you go out with people who are, it's like anything. I think it's when you, well, let's use the racing analogy. Actually, when I did my racing license, my ARDS license at Silverstone, which, by the way, if anybody's listening that haven't done it, even if you have no intention of racing a car, because it's bloody expensive to go racing, getting your racing license is a brilliant experience. And a 1 day ARDS test, it's not, or ARDS course, it's not a cheap thing. It's, I don't know the last time I looked,
Right.
500-600 quid maybe. But you have a load of track time and you have a professional driver in with you for a couple of hours and so on. But it's their litmus test that I think is a really interesting one. And when I just before, so you have some classroom sessions, you have a test on things like flags, and you need to know some theory and so on. But then you have a session where you get taught by an instructor, and then at the end of that, they basically monitor you for, it was either 3 or 5 laps. They don't say anything, but you have to drive fast. You have to drive, like you would do in a race, and they just
Right.
sit there and watch. And at the end of those 5 laps, they make a determination as to whether or not you are worthy of
Right.
having a race license. And their litmus test is, because I asked the guy when I passed, I said, "What are you looking for?" And he said, "Oh, it's really simple." He said, "Forget all the technique and all the things we've taught you. They're important. But for me, all I think about is if I was racing next weekend and you were in
Yeah.
the car next to me, would I feel comfortable going into the first corner
Yes.
side by side with you?" And that's
Yes.
exactly what we've been talking about. And if
Yeah.
you go motor racing, you have to be assessed to check that you are good enough to do that before they
Yes.
allow you to go racing.
Yes.
That's how you get your license. If you go on a sportif,
No.
you don't. There's no, certainly in the UK, there's no push bike license that you have to or test you have to pass. You could literally just go in and actually, when you think about that, that is incredible that you can be put into a situation where you can be in a group of riders literally inches apart, bowling down the road at 25 miles an hour, and no one's assessed you as to whether or not you have the skill set to do that.
Yes. I think that's a very fair point. Because I think, and your side by side things are really relevant as well. Because the amount of people who I have been out with riding, who you're riding side by side, and you go round a 90-degree bend or into a junction, and next thing you know, they're on the outside, and we're doing a left-hand turn, for example, and next thing you know, they are apexing the corner, and you go, excuse me, just one moment. Did you realise that I was actually taking the line that you have just taken from me, and you needed to go round understanding that I'm going to be there?
Oh,
Yeah.
really?
It's
It is funny though. I mean, you cycle next to some people, and you think, "I'm going to give them a wide berth." You can tell a mile.
yes.
I can spot them a mile away just by the way that they're cycling together and
Oh,
stuff.
Ockle, Ockle Hill
Incoming.
Sportive, 2016-17. A guy in a group of riders. Now, there's 2 issues with this point that I'm about to make. The guy went onto his TT bars.
What?
So,
What did he have
yes,
TT bars on in the first place?
point number 1.
Right.
Point number 1, in a sportif, I mean, it depends on what the regulations are in that particular sportif, but you are not allowed anything that protrudes out further than the hoods of the bike.
Yeah.
which is why you have shorter. So in a draft legal triathlon, for example, you're allowed to have draft legal centre bars, but they're not allowed to protrude out further from the hoods of your brake and gear lever set. So number
Yeah.
one, you should never on a Sportive have a TT set of bars fitted.
No.
End of. But then secondly, if you are in a group of riders, you should never be on them because you are not
No.
over your brakes and your gears at that point.
No.
I mean,
No.
and
Oh my
I
God.
went mental. I said, "Are you trying to kill people? Get back on the hoods, get your finger over the brake so you're ready for it." Scary, really
Wow.
scary.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah, but it wasn't malicious. He didn't wake up that
No.
morning saying, I want to kill
No,
20 cyclists."
he probably had
Yeah,
no idea really of the dangers, I
correct,
suppose.
correct.
I mean, I
So,
have seen people on time trial bikes in Sportives, but I can remember seeing a lady on one actually, the last Sportive I did, and she
mm,
was really good. She kind of, whenever you got near her, said, "I can't ride with you. I'm on a, I think she either had special dispensation to ride the bike, she was training
right,
for something maybe,
sure,
but she wouldn't ride with anybody. And
perfect.
certainly the triathlon I did, I had aero bars on my road bike, but you
Mm,
weren't allowed to draft anyone anyway. So.
no,
But yeah, no, because oh man, they're good fun. Getting on a set of bars and I mean, you can get you can get a proper lick on a TT bike if you know what you're doing.
yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah.
that N+1. I think we've said this already. TT bikes or triathlon bikes, I just think look awesome. I have no need for one because I don't do time trials, but in terms of bikes that look cool, they're right up there for me. Especially some of these like really aggressive the triathlon bikes that have like the integrated water bottles in the frame and stuff with a
Yeah,
kind of drinking straw sticking out the handlebars. It's just cool as. But you need to do
yes.
an Ironman to do one of those, really. So,
Well, you need an Iron Man. You need to have a double-barreled surname, and you need to be a financier from Canary Wharf,
yeah,
and
yeah,
then you can go and be a TT rider.
yeah. I would love to. I mean, on a serious note, I would love to do an Ironman one day. Um,
Really?
oh man, I would love to. I think I'd start with a half Ironman because the swimming phase is my weakest. I've done an Olympic distance triathlon,
Hmm.
um, which was good. I did that in 3 hours, I think.
Hmm.
Um, so that was or sub 3 hours. I'm trying to think, yeah, it was.
That's
So
very
that
good.
was good. Um, but I'd love to do one, and but you know why I really want to do one.
Why?
So I noticed when we were together at the weekend, you've got some ink on your arm.
Oh, now, okay. But if you
But
are about to no, stop. If you are
you know
about to
what I'm going
tell
to say,
me,
don't you?
if you are about to tell me you want a red eye on
Yeah,
your calf,
yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
Seriously, we're no longer friends because that is, uh, I mean, kudos to anybody who has done an Ironman. You guys are legends. But seriously,
It's the only tattoo I'd ever have. Because
seriously,
when you're on a sporty and you bent down over the bar, you're chewing your bar tape, and then this guy comes. It's happened to me a number of times. Comes flying past, and they got the Iron Man tattoo logoed on the back of their calf. You think, okay, hats off to you. As long as it's genuine, as long as it's like it's a bit like people who put a Nurburgring sticker on the back of their car that haven't actually driven around the Nordschleife. That really winds me up.
yeah.
You've got to have done it to have it, but yeah. It's the only tattoo. But I had a friend of mine who done it. Apparently, when you do an Ironman, because it's got to be a proper Ironman event as well, not just
Yeah,
the same distance.
sure.
That
Yes.
there is at the end, at the finish point, there is a tent with tattoo artists in it that you literally can walk across the finish line straight into the tent and get your Ironman logo on the back of your leg.
Flipping joking. My calf would that's what would happen to me. I'd be halfway through I'd end up with something like, I don't know, like a
Yeah,
tea. 'Cause
yeah, because it would start cramping.
yeah, 'cause I'd cramp.
So yeah, but no. So yeah, there we go. But yeah, no. I think. I mean, we're coming to the end of our time. I noticed, but I honestly think for um, so let's kind of recap what we talked about for those people who maybe fancy riding out in groups, who maybe just ride on their own or with one or two people. The whole technique of drafting is it, when you get it right.
Yeah.
And I think I mentioned before when I did the Tour de Force in 2010, one day we were in our team were in a lot of trouble. We had like
Mm,
68, 70 kilometers to go. We were at the top of the Col de Sulor, and we were all completely spent.
mm,
And the pro that was was with us kind of said, right, there's only one way we're going to get back in a decent time. We ride on and through as a team. Let's do it. And we
yeah.
did. We rode 70 Ks without stopping, on and through, and we flew. And
Yeah.
to this day, I think it's the coolest thing I've ever done on a bike. It was
Yes.
amazing.
Yes.
So when you get it right, it's amazing, and you can, if you want to, if you want to increase your Strava segment times or get them better, ride as a group because you will.
Yes.
You go so much quicker. But keep an eye out. The person on the front you should always be looking as far ahead as you possibly can when you're on a bike anyway.
Yeah.
You want to be looking for tractors in fields and mud on the roads and potholes and parked cars and
Yeah.
all kinds of things. Your observation should be really, really good. But when you've got people behind you and
Yes.
they're concentrating on your wheel, you
Yeah.
need to be their eyes, basically. So I think
Correct.
it's super important.
Correct.
And hopefully, we've kind of shed a bit of light into our thoughts. I've been wanting to get Paul to talk about his love of what we were going to call them, the Turbo Trainer program riders.
Yeah, just really strong units who have been really disciplined and seriously massive commending to those people as well because a lot of these guys have literally spent so many hours on the turbo working hard, shedding the pounds, getting the watts up. The watts per kilos are now really ramping up. They've spent
Yeah,
money on a really nice bike. They've got a goal in mind. They go and want to do it. And I can't tell you how proud I am of all of you who have put those hours in. Right? That
yeah,
that that is so important. However, before and I know it's been difficult because of lockdown and groups of riders have not been able to sort of get out and cycle clubs have not had the same amount of attendance and that sort of thing. But if you are thinking if some of the summer sportifs are going to be going ahead and you have been training hard and you've got yourself sorted, if you are a couple of months away from that, if you can, and there is a group, a local cycle group, just put the ego to one side, just put that proper to bed. There's no room for ego in a group of cyclists, right? That is most
yeah,
important. Everybody's working together, but go and find a local cycle club and just say, look, I'm going to be doing a sportive. I've worked really hard on my turbo trainer. I want to be riding in a group of people, but I don't really know what I'm doing. Could I
yeah,
join your club? Can I come out on some rides with you? Could you just teach me the basics so I'm making sure everyone's safe? And any good cycle club would turn around and go, well, defo, because you could be alongside me and it could be you that takes me out if I say, no, I'm sorry, you
yeah,
can't do that. So, get the
yeah.
experience.
And if you're a proper unit and pushing out the watts, they might want you for their team anyways.
Yeah,
They're bound to say yes, come in.
there is that. Yeah, yeah.
But so cool. Well, I've really enjoyed that. Time does fly when we do these podcasts.
Yes.
So lots more Cycle Sunday Series 2 content being made. I cannot wait to get out on the Arcadex this weekend. In fact, I might do it tomorrow evening,
Yay.
um, and make some content. And we look forward to whatever the subject is we're going to talk about next week. If you've got any ideas for subjects for our podcast next week, drop it in the comments
Yep.
or send us a DM. That would be awesome.
Yep.
But guys, as the hour draws very close, we're going to draw this one to a close.
Yep. But
And
before we do,
oh, here we go.
please like and share.
Yes.
Don't.
Yes, if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, give it a rating.
Yes.
Like, share. We need subscription as well. Subscribe to the YouTube channel.
Yeah, if you listen
because we need more people listening to this.
Correct. Yes. Let's make it happen. We want 1,000 subscribers to Cycle Sunday podcast channel on YouTube before the next one. Come on, guys.
Awesome.
Yes. It's a challenge. It's a corporate challenge.
It's a very good challenge.
Yes.
It's a good challenge. So, on that bombshell, it comes that time where I say, I've been Pete Greaves.
And I've been Paul Bowker.
You take care, guys. Ride safe.
Ride safe.